A poor student admired a shoe she couldn't afford, her fingers trembling as she pressed them to the store glass, unaware that the billionaire watching from behind her was about to make a decision so unimaginable that what the billionaire did next will make you speechless. She stood there in her faded jeans, backpack stitched in 3 corners, eyes full of longing for a life far above her reach, while across the street, a man whose empire stretched across cities observed her with silent fascination. The poor student admired the shoe again, lips parting in a helpless smile she couldn't sustain, the kind of smile born not from having but from dreaming. She didn't see him, this billionaire, lean forward in his sleek black car, studying the way she cherished a pair of shoes most people would overlook, the way her hope glowed brighter than the polished leather behind the glass. A poor student, a billionaire, a shoe she couldn't afford, 3 worlds about to collide, but for reasons no one could predict. Why would a billionaire care about a girl who had nothing? Why did he hesitate instead of stepping out? What happened when destiny forced their paths to cross, but not in the way anyone expected? Felicia Avery stood barefoot inside the thrift shop, the floor cold under her soles, the last pair of shoes she owned broken at the heel. Outside the glass, just 3 steps away, glowed the object that felt like a miracle. A pair of ivory sneakers, stitched clean, soft-looking, brand new, shining beneath bright store lights like they were made for someone better than her. She exhaled slowly, eyes soft as water, and her heart thumped the way a heart does when it wants something it has no business wanting. She was a poor student. Everyone at Ridgefield Community College knew her as the girl who worked double shifts at Sunny Mart and took night classes with a backpack weighed down by second-hand textbooks and dreams. She studied business administration because she believed knowledge was the only path out of struggle, even if her pockets stayed empty. Some nights she skipped dinner to save for books. Other nights she slept in the library because the heat in her studio apartment shut off again. Yet she smiled, always smiled, like life owed her nothing but she owed it effort. Across the street, in a tinted Bentley that didn't belong on this side of town, Alexander Hale watched her. Billionaire entrepreneur. Tech magnate. Youngest Fortune-listed CEO in 5 states. The world called him untouchable, a man made of glass and gold, success and silence. But tonight he was restless. He had taken a wrong turn leaving a board meeting and ended up in a neighborhood his wealth had insulated him from for years. He meant to drive through without slowing. But then he saw her. A poor student admiring a shoe she couldn't afford. She didn't beg. She didn't complain. She only looked at those sneakers the way some people look at stars they were told they'd never reach, beautiful, distant, meant for someone else. And it stirred him. The engine hummed beneath him, soft like patience. Alex leaned closer, studying her through the glass. Her worn jeans, her fraying backpack, her expression full of yearning yet not bitterness. Something about her steadiness tugged at memory, of a girl he once knew. Evelyn. His sister. A flashback hit like lightning. Evelyn barefoot in the backyard at 8 years old, twirling in a summer dress, smiling even though their father yelled about money. She died at 17 in an old car their family couldn't afford to fix. He had been 20, already building software in a dorm room, just beginning to taste hope. He carried guilt like a stone no wealth could melt. And now this stranger, this student, mirrored her. Gentle dreams, quiet pain, soft hope. Felicia finally stepped back from the window. She couldn't buy the sneakers. Price tag $79.99, equal to 3 days' meals. Her shift started in 20 minutes. She needed to cross town in shoes that barely clung to her feet. She adjusted her backpack and turned. He should have driven away. He didn't. The car door clicked open, night air swirling in. Felicia paused when she heard footsteps behind her, but she didn't turn. People rarely stopped for her. She walked toward the bus stop, limping slightly, pretending the pavement wasn't scraping her heel. Alexander followed but kept distance, unsure why he cared. A billionaire could solve her problem in one heartbeat, but money was a blunt tool. He knew giving could feel like pity. And pity was humiliation disguised as kindness. He didn't want to humiliate her. He wanted to understand her. At the bus stop bench, she sat, pulling out a tattered notebook filled with quotes she wrote to keep herself going. One day I'll own things, I won't just admire them. She traced the sentence slowly. A billionaire stepped closer. Thunder rolled, not from the sky but inside him, an impulse powerful enough to upend both their lives. He could change her night, her week, maybe her whole future. He could buy the entire store if he wished. But why couldn't he move? Why did he just stand there, breath lodged behind his ribs? Felicia looked up finally, brown eyes meeting his steel blue gaze, and in that single second the world tightened into silence. She didn't know him. He didn't know her. Yet fate had already begun threading together what neither of them could undo. He swallowed. She blinked. A poor student. A billionaire. A shoe she couldn't afford. What was he about to do? And why did destiny feel like it was holding its breath? The buses were running late again, hissing far down the street but never appearing, leaving Felicia hugging her knees beneath the flickering yellow streetlight. The night wasn't cold, but poverty had a way of making every breeze feel sharper. She tried to ignore the billionaire's silent presence beside her, thinking he was just another passerby out of place in this neighborhood. His posture too confident, shoes too polished, presence too heavy with wealth even though he said nothing. Alexander kept his hands tucked in his coat pockets, unsure how to start. He wasn't used to conversation without negotiation, without numbers, without power. For the first time in a long time he felt small. Words were easy when signing multi-million-dollar deals, but this? Approaching a girl just trying to survive? It felt delicate. He cleared his throat, voice low but steady. You like those sneakers? Felicia flinched, startled. She hadn't realized he was watching her that closely. Her instinct kicked in, smile, hide the struggle. Oh, yeah, she said softly. They're nice. Alexander studied her tone. Not greedy. Not expectant. Just a simple truth. He sat down beside her slowly, maintaining distance, as if afraid to fracture a glass that was already cracked. Why didn't you buy them? Felicia laughed, not bitter but brittle like a note played on a cracked violin. They cost $79.99. She lifted her foot, showing the broken sneaker sole. And this one cost $5. Alexander looked and something twisted inside him. Money was invisible to him. Numbers on screens, digits that moved like air. But here, $79 was oxygen. A door. A future. Or at least comfort. He tried to speak gently. You work. 3 part-time jobs, she replied, rubbing her eyes. But tuition and rent eat everything. And books. She gestured to her backpack. Life is expensive when you start with nothing. The words hit him harder than they should have. Start with nothing. He'd been there too. Before fortune, before fame, before the boardrooms and the investors who worshipped his name. He remembered sleepless nights coding on borrowed laptops. He remembered grocery stores where he counted every coin, praying it reached the total. He remembered Evelyn's voice. Lex, one day you'll give people what we never had. Her voice lived in him. Felicia's bus finally growled into sight, tired and old. She stood, adjusting her bag straps. Well, nice talking to you. And she meant it. There was no angle, no expectation. Just goodbye. Alexander hesitated only a breath before stepping forward. Felicia. She froze. He hadn't asked her name. She hadn't given it. Her heart knocked hard in her chest. She turned slowly. How did you? He smiled, not confident but human. You dropped your student ID when you crossed the street. He held it out, worn edges taped. She hadn't even noticed it fell. She reached to take it, but his fingers held a moment longer. Not possession but awareness. Their eyes met and a quiet current surged between them. He finally released it. She swallowed, nerves fluttering. Thank you. He nodded, then said something he didn't plan. Let me buy you the shoes. Her breath caught. The world around her seemed to pause. Cars passed. The bus engine rumbled. But Felicia stood still. No, she whispered quickly. I can't accept that. Pride, like a thin protective shield, rose around her. People don't just buy strangers expensive things. Alexander felt the tension between generosity and intrusion, the same line he feared crossing. It's just a gift. Nothing is just a gift, she replied, eyes sharp with reality. People want things. Favors. Gratitude. They always do. I can't afford to owe anyone. He stared. She wasn't naive. She wasn't desperate. She was cautious because life had taught her to be. He admired her more. Before he could respond, the bus doors hissed open. She stepped inside, gripping the rail. Their eyes locked one last time, a thread stretching thin across the doorway. Then she was gone. Alexander stood alone on the sidewalk, chest aching with something new. An urge, a question, a decision unfinished. He didn't even know why she mattered. But she did. Enough that he found himself walking into the thrift store minutes later, buying not only the sneakers but something the cashier looked shocked to ring up. A small velvet box he had noticed near the register. Something delicate. Something meaningful. He didn't plan to give it to her yet. He only held it in his palm as if waiting for fate to speak again. And fate didn't wait long. The next morning, Felicia stood in Sunny Mart uniform behind the counter, exhausted eyes scanning groceries. When he appeared again, Clean-cut, composed, out of place beneath fluorescent lights. Her stomach flipped. She didn't know whether to smile or run. Alexander placed a small white paper bag on the counter. "For you." Felicia stared. He didn't say what was inside. He didn't explain why. He didn't push. But when she opened the bag and saw those sneakers, her dream, her longing, her hands shook until she had to place them flat on the counter just to breathe. Tears filled her eyes, hot and humiliating. She whispered, voice trembling, "Why?" He answered softly, "Because you reminded me of someone I loved and lost." Felicia's gaze softened, pain meeting pain, though neither asked for details. But what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that this was only the beginning. Because Alexander Hale wasn't done. He was about to change her life in a way no one could predict. And what he would do next would truly make everyone speechless. Felicia slipped into the new sneakers slowly, like someone afraid a miracle might crumble if touched too fast. The shoes fit perfectly, soft, weightless, gentle against wounds life had carved into her feet. She looked up at Alexander with disbelief and something else, fear of hope. He didn't hover. He didn't ask for gratitude. He only stood with quiet patience, as though giving without expecting was the wealthiest act a person could commit. But the world notices kindness the way dogs smell meat. Later that afternoon on campus, whispers spread like wildfire. "Is that Felicia? With new sneakers? She finally got money?" "No, someone bought them for her. A man." Curiosity sharpened into gossip, harmless at first then hungry. People who had never looked at her twice suddenly paid attention. One person in particular noticed with venomous interest, Tessa Grant. Perfect hair. Designer tote. GPA funded by her father's real estate empire. Tessa wasn't cruel by nature, only entitled, and entitlement breeds cruelty like damp breeds mold. She strutted toward Felicia with a smile polished to hide rot. "Cute shoes," Tessa said, voice dripping honey over ice. "Did you finally learn how to manage your finances or?" She leaned closer. "Did someone manage them for you?" Felicia stiffened, clutching her books. "They were a gift." "From who?" Tessa's eyes scanned the courtyard. "That man in the suit? The one watching you earlier?" Felicia's heart lurched. She hadn't told anyone Alexander came to the campus gates earlier, not to intrude, but to return her forgotten notebook with careful respect. She didn't recall seeing Tessa watching. But Tessa saw everything that could benefit her. "You should be careful," Tessa continued with a false concern. "Rich men don't just give things. They take." Felicia forced a calm breath. "Not everyone wants something in return." Tessa laughed, a bright, brittle sound. "Oh, sweetheart, everyone wants something. Especially billionaires." Felicia walked away before her resolve cracked. She didn't owe Tessa her peace. But Alexander Hale was not done shaping her destiny. The next week, the campus burst into life for the annual innovation competition. Students pitching business ideas to local investors. For most, it was practice. For Felicia, it was hope incarnate. She had spent months building a concept for an online textbook reselling platform. Affordable, peer-to-peer, cutting down costs students drowned under. She didn't have funding, equipment, or a team. But she had vision. She submitted her name anyway. On pitch day, she stood backstage trembling, papers shaking, throat tight. She wasn't dressed for investors. Second-hand blazer, hair pinned with fading clips, hope bundled inside nerves. But she was ready. Until her name was announced, and Tessa stepped forward instead. Felicia blinked. Tessa smiled sweetly and lifted Felicia's business proposal. Her research, her diagrams, her dreams, printed under Tessa Grant's name. "Peer book," Tessa announced, confident and practiced. A platform to buy, sell, and trade academic resources without inflated prices. Applause thundered. Investors nodded with interest. Professors leaned forward. Tessa glowed. Felicia's world tilted sideways. She stood there frozen, a scream locked inside her. No, 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 no. Her project. Her work. Her future, stolen. She forced her legs to move, heart racing, breath sharp. She reached the stage steps trembling with rage and disbelief. "Tessa, that's my pitch." Tessa didn't flinch. She leaned close, whispering like a knife. "You should have kept your things locked, poor student." The room went still. Investors stared. Students murmured. Professors exchanged uncertain looks. Felicia's pulse pounded in her ears. She inhaled fire. "That idea is mine. I built it. She stole my work." Tessa smirked. "Do you have proof?" Silence hit like a hammer. Felicia's chest collapsed inward. "Proof. Screenshots. draft copies, anything. But her laptop was broken, her notes handwritten, her mind full of pieces nobody could verify. Tessa had money, influence, charisma. Felicia had nothing but truth. Tessa's father rose from the front row, voice booming. My daughter would never steal. You should think carefully before you accuse people above your station. Laughter rippled, quiet, sharp like teeth. Felicia stood alone. Humiliation wrapped around her like chains. Her vision blurred, but she did not cry. Pride held her spine upright. She wanted to run, scream, disappear. Instead, she walked off the stage, face blank but soul burning. Outside, she collapsed on the steps and finally broke. Tears slipped silently like confessions no one heard. Her sneakers, once joy, felt like reminders of a world she didn't belong to. Then a shadow fell over her. Alexander Hale. He had been in the audience. She looked up slowly, eyes red, voice cracking like old wood. They took everything. They made me small. Why am I never enough? Alexander sat beside her, gaze intense. No pity, only recognition. You are more than enough. They're threatened because you shine despite having nothing. She shook her head. I'm just a poor student. You're not just anything, he said quietly. You are potential. She swallowed pain like glass. He reached into his coat and handed her the velvet box he bought the night they met. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside lay a silver necklace engraved with 2 words. Prove them wrong. Felicia gasped. Not jewelry. A promise. A spark. A war cry. Alexander met her gaze with unwavering certainty. I believe in you, he said, and I'm going to help you fight. Her heart beat like thunder, slowly regaining life, purpose, fire. Because he wasn't offering pity. He was offering possibility. And what he did next would upend everything. Felicia returned to campus the next morning with the necklace resting against her collarbone like armor, like breath, like rebirth. She still felt bruised, but bruises don't mean broken. They mean healing has begun. And behind her walked a man the entire school would soon know by name. Alexander Hale didn't arrive quietly. Black SUV. Security. Presence like thunder disguised as calm daylight. Students scattered like leaves in strong wind, professors froze mid-sentence, and even Tessa, standing near the admin steps, turned pale as recognition flashed. Billionaire. Geo. Fortune. Headlines. What was he doing here? He didn't walk like a man uncertain. He walked like truth embodied. Straight to the dean's office. Felicia followed, heartbeat a drum war. She didn't understand everything. She didn't know his full plan. But she trusted the fire inside her and the belief she saw in his eyes, the kind that rebuilds shattered dreams. Inside the boardroom, cameras blinked, voices hushed, judgment hovered like smoke. The innovation panel sat stiff and uneasy, Tessa beside her father wearing forced confidence like cheap perfume. Alexander stood. No introduction needed. His name entered the room before he opened his mouth. I attended yesterday's competition, he said, voice calm but sharp enough to cut marble. And I witnessed theft. Gasps crackled through air. Tessa blinked too slowly, faltering. Sir, Mr. Hale, I believe you're mistaken. Alexander raised one hand. Silence obeyed. He turned toward Felicia. Tell them everything. And she did. Not shaking. Not shrinking. She spoke truth like a blade, clear, strong, unstoppable. She described her research nights, her sleepless drafting, her refining, her hope. She described believing in opportunity until someone with money tried to crush her under the heel of privilege. Every word was steady. Every breath was earned. But truth without proof is often ignored. Until Alexander smiled slightly and reached for his phone. He tapped play. The room filled with video, Felicia at the library weeks ago, writing, thinking aloud. She had recorded voice memos on a cracked phone to track her ideas. He had found them on her notebook card slot when he returned it. She forgot she'd left them there. He didn't? Tessa's face drained of color. Screenshots followed. Timestamps, planning sheets, draft flowcharts Alexander helped extract last night from her scattered papers by scanning them into his developer team system. Not rewriting, just validating, digitizing, preserving. Evidence impossible to deny. Whispers turned like tides. She was telling the truth. Tessa stole the whole concept. She should be disqualified, no, suspended. Tessa trembled, then broke, voice cracking, eyes wild. It's not fair. She's poor, no one even noticed her work until he came, And that's the tragedy, Alexander replied softly. People notice money before brilliance. But brilliance deserves its day. The board exchanged glances, shame pressed like gravity. The dean finally stood, voice crisp. Tessa Grant is hereby disqualified. Felicia Avery will be recognized as the rightful owner and presenter of Peer Book. Applause erupted, not polite but explosive. Liberating. Warm as sunrise. Felicia's lungs filled with light she'd never breathed before. Tears shimmered but did not fall. They stood proud, held like victory. Tessa fled the room. Her father followed, but the echo of entitlement faded behind closing doors. Felicia turned toward Alexander, chest tight with gratitude she didn't know how to express. You saved me. He shook his head. No. I revealed you. You saved yourself by surviving long enough to be seen. Those words anchored in her bones like truth. A week later, Felicia stepped onto a different stage, one built not on theft or pity but recognition. Investors invited her to present Peer Book again, and this time the crowd leaned in like she was the sun. Her voice carried confidence. Her ideas flowed like rivers breaking dams. And when she finished, silence held for a heartbeat before applause thundered through walls, through futures, through every wound poverty carved in her past. 3 investors offered partnerships. 1 college offered a full scholarship. A tech incubator extended funding to build her platform. Felicia Avery, the poor student who admired a shoe she couldn't afford, was about to become CEO of her own company. After the presentation, she and Alexander walked outside beneath warm afternoon light. She wore the sneakers that once symbolized longing but now symbolized rising. The necklace glimmered with purpose. She looked at him, not as a billionaire but as a man who believed quietly and fiercely. Why me? She asked again, voice soft but no longer small. Alexander inhaled, eyes distant with old pain. My sister never got her chance. She was brilliant, unseen, unheard. You remind me of her, not in face but in fight. I couldn't save Evelyn, but I can help someone who still has time to win. Felicia stepped closer, gratitude shining like dawn. You did more than help me win. You helped me believe. Wind brushed her hair like blessing. He smiled, the kind of smile built from healing, not wealth. And what you build from here will be your choice alone. She nodded, holding both strength and possibility in her hands. Because destiny hadn't handed her a miracle. She earned a destiny after surviving without one. And the world would remember her not as the poor student, but as the woman who proved everyone wrong. The story didn't end with the billionaire giving her shoes. It began with what she built while wearing them. And truly, what the billionaire did next made everyone speechless. Because he didn't take credit. He let her shine.